Hey, good morning. Uh, one of my online great books members and Instagram followers, Jordan, sent me a list of financial questions, and I'm gonna answer these. Um, I'll wait for you guys. Hello, Mr. Old English. I'll wait for you guys to show up. Hello, Ragnarok and Library Majestic. Um, I'll wait for a few more people to show up, and then I'll do it. We'll record this and keep it. Uh, anyway, Online Great Books member Jordan and Instagram follower, um, he had listened to Barbell Logic. I think it's episodes 156 and 176, or maybe it's 157 and 176, where I talked about personal finance a little bit, and he was very interested in that. And he sent me a list of follow-up questions on those episodes, and wanted to hear my answers about this stuff. So I thought I'd have a pipe and a cup of coffee here and answer those for Jordan, and maybe it'll be helpful for somebody else. It'll certainly be helpful for me because I will have to think through my positions in order to communicate them. He says, one, you mentioned on a podcast years back that you have owned over 50 homes. I assume some of these were rental properties. Would you recommend rental income as a strategy for wealth? Yeah, they were rental properties. I had more than that, had a whole bunch. They were rental properties. In 2015, I sold all of them. I would not recommend rental income as a strategy for wealth. The housing market is so very manipulated by low interest rates, low doc, almost zero verification mortgages and so on, that almost anyone who can scrap together $1,000 can buy a home at a very, very low interest rate. So the people that you end up renting to are either very short-term renters, a businessman that's going to be in town for 6 months, or complete lowlifes who can't somehow find a way to scrap together just a few $1,000s and a little bit of paperwork and some W-2s to get a mortgage. The housing market is so manipulated that you're not able to get the rents that you need, and you end up operating on the depreciation of the properties or losing money. In some areas of the country, capital appreciation of the properties is pretty significant, and people could come out pretty well on their exit, but not in the part of the world that I'm in. I don't think it's a good business model under the current conditions, and these conditions have existed since probably the late 90s. So, no, I do not recommend rental income as a strategy for wealth accumulation. Maybe somebody else is better at it than I am and does better. That's fine, good for them, but I don't recommend it. I do think that someone could operate a rental business and be their own leasing agent, be their own maintenance man, and make that sort of their job, and make a living out of the thing, and then punch out at the end, and then get a big punch out when you sell all those properties. That could be okay, but as a passive thing, no, I don't. It's not very good. He says, what advice could you offer current and potential landlords? I don't really know. Probably get out, but hopefully those people are doing better than I did and have an insight that I don't have. There are also some problems with liability in that area that have cropped up in the last 10 or 15 years, maybe the last 20 years. If someone puts a meth lab in one of your properties, you have to clean that up, and it's very, very, very expensive, and no insurance policies that I'm aware of will cover that expense, and that alone could wipe out years worth of profits. So I think there's some problems with it. Clearly there are people that do okay with it, but they're highly, highly leveraged. They're real estate investment trusts, and they're highly leveraged. And I'm not interested in running a business that requires me to be 90% debt or something like that. I'm not interested in it. Number two, so a recap, a listener, Jordan, sent me a list of financial questions as follow-ups to Barbell Logic episodes, I think 156 and 176 that I had done on personal finance. And he had some further questions. He sent those to me, and I'm answering them today. If you have any questions, pop them in here, and we'll deal with them. Question 2 from Jordan. He says, what is your opinion on company pensions? How reliable are they as life expectancy rises and cost of living increases? I've been expecting SHTF for, I don't know, since about 1983. I've been expecting those things to be insolvent for years and years and years. I've been wrong at every step of the way. I don't know. I think if you have a pension, I think that's wonderful. Good for you. But you need to save and act like you don't have it. Most pensions, from what I understand, I've never been eligible for one, so I actually don't know a lot about them because, they've not had any bearing on my life or my financial, or my, retirement planning. But from what I understand, most of them have a survivor's option on the, so that, you can get 100% pension benefit, and then it ends when you die and your spouse gets nothing. And then some of them have like a 50% or 70 or 80% benefit where you get 80% or whatever, a percentage of the maximum guaranteed pension. But if you die, your spouse continues to get it. I recommend doing that. But I don't know. I know that there are a lot of pension funds are underfunded. A lot of them are underfunded, but there is supposedly a federal agency that will backstop those, like the FDIC or the FSLIC. So I really don't know. If you have a pension, good for you. Pretend like you don't have it though, and save and invest as well as you can in order to make sure that you've got everything you need. And when that pension comes in, it'll just be bonus time, I'll go back here. BJ Dello says, listen to the student loan jubilee episode of your pod yesterday. That's of the Scott stream. Do you still feel similar that it needs to happen? Yes. In fact, I will make the same argument. It is going to happen whether it's legally sanctioned or not. I read the other day that there's like $1.4 trillion in student loan debt, and about a third of those are in arrears. If the student loans can't be paid, they won't be paid. And when they're in that condition, there is a de facto jubilee. But the problem is, because the lender won't be made whole. But the problem is there's a continuing and lingering effect on the borrower, and it will have a huge stifling effect on the economy. Young people are the ones who typically take risks and start businesses. And those people are being crushed by debt. The student loans are fraudulent. They should be forgiven just on the basis of the fraud alone, in fact. Hey, let's go get some coffee. Do you think the value style of investing will return to its former glory given the current environment? Texas Pete asks. Yeah, eventually it will, but it'll require a total collapse of this system. I wrote a short blog on my ScottHambrick.com website about we are in a post-financial economy, and I believe that's true. I still believe that's true. But value style investing will return at some point. It may take much longer than you or I have. But it has to, because it's the only objective way to deal with financial decisions, in my opinion. Everything else is witchcraft, and I really mean that, and mysticism. Value investing does exist in the small business sector. You can probably go find a small business owned by a baby boomer in your community and purchase that based on a value investing metric. And yeah, there are a lot of those opportunities, but I don't see them working in publicly traded companies right now. Still don't. Library Majestic says, are you still a proponent of paying off a mortgage over investing, given that mortgage rates are below the official inflation rate? Yes. Yes. Yes, I am. The mortgage is stifling for so many reasons. You can listen to those episodes on Barbell Logic for me to talk about that at length. I don't care if the fucking interest rate is zero. I don't care if it's zero. You pay off the mortgage. I actually talk about 0% interest car loans. They fuck up your cash flow. They fuck up your mind. They fuck up the way you approach problems, financial problems. You've got to get those off of your psychic balance sheet and off of your actual balance sheet. The making the money on the split doesn't make any difference. Additionally, people never do that. People never actually make the split. You know, we have a psychological problem. People do, and we have trouble with discipline, me included, and it's best to just pay those things off. Texas Pete says, growth has been king for several years. Yeah, it's bull. Texas Pete also says, it scares the crap out of me, guns and butter strategy, maybe. BJ Dello says, Mab Max, hey, hello. BJ Dello says, agreed on the student loans. I was able to graduate without them, but I see so many of my peers that are being crushed by awful, awful terms with nothing to show for it. Yeah, there needs to be a jubilee on those. Or in fact, there needs to be a jubilee on virtually all of it, and lending needs to be outlawed. Usury was outlawed for thousands of years for a reason. For a reason. I'm going to go back to Jordan's questions here. Here's number 3. Keep bringing the questions. This is fun for me. Hopefully it's useful for you guys, too. 3, he says, what are some books, newsletters, and podcasts you could recommend that align with with your financial values, he says. You're being mine. Books. This is very difficult because I have started to change my opinion about the current environment. I still believe in value index investing as the best way to do it, but I also think everything's so tampered with that it no longer works. But that being said, you should go read The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, Security Analysis by Benjamin Graham, any of the books by Geraldine Weiss, and you should get an HP financial calculator, HP 12C calculator, and do all of the practice problems in the manual for that. There is also a practice problem workbook for that calculator. Get that workbook and do all the practice problems in it. If you're a hard motherfucker, if you're a hard person, go get the Noonan book on engineering financial analysis and work through that. Just do a little bit every day, and you'll know what to do. As far as podcasts, I have no idea. Who's out there. I don't listen to that kind of stuff. And he says newsletters for a long time. I got the IQ Trends newsletter, which is Kelly. It's published by Kelly Wright, who's a fine guy. Talked to him on the phone, and he's a smart dude, and he's a follower of Geraldine Weiss, and he is a financial. Well, he's a value investor. There's a guy named Ethan Baker in Joplin, Missouri, of all places, who runs a very nice value portfolio. And if you don't want to manage anything, Ethan Baker in Joplin is. I'm sorry, not Ethan. Evan Baker in Joplin has got it going on. He's got it going on. So if you want to set it and forget it and have a value portfolio, Baker can help you out. He's on 29th Street in Joplin. He says, how can one get started in value investing? Do you need your knowledge? He's talking about me. He says, do you need your knowledge of running a business to have success with this strategy? I don't think so, although it is helpful. It is certainly helpful. How can one get started in value investing? You know, first of all, figure out what a value is and learn how to evaluate businesses to see if they demonstrate that value. But you're going to have to get an education first. But again, if you don't have your cars paid off and your student loans paid off and all of that, don't fuck with it. Uh, don't mess with it. Just mess with it. Go get your education. Go read those books. Do the practice problems. Start a portfolio, a tracking portfolio. Don't buy anything, right? But say a virtual portfolio. Build yourself a spreadsheet. You can make that spreadsheet update by polling Yahoo Finance or whatever, and it'll update itself automatically. And do it for play, right? To test your ability. But meanwhile, you need to be paying off your debt. Don't do value investing. Don't do any investing until you've paid off your debt. Just don't do it. It's running a business, I think, is valuable because you just start to see what is absolute bullshit. And the growth sector is just full of bullshit. Like Tesla doesn't make money. It doesn't make decisions that lead to making money. And the company is bullshit. And if you've ever run a business, you'll know it's bullshit. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't eventually be a giant company that has a great deal of worth, but you'll know that it got there through deception and being subsidized by probably the government and a bunch of scoundrels. That might be the winning game, that might be the winning game, but you can smell, if you've run a good size small business or a medium sized business, you can smell the bull 10,000 miles away. And if you run a small business and you watch your own financials, your own profit and loss statement, your own balance sheet, and you look at those things, weekly or frequently, it makes you develop a sixth sense, an intuition for evaluating other financials. So when you look at the SEC filings or the annual reports of these big companies, you've got a lot more practice with dealing with those things, and it's a big help. Texas Pete said, would starting a barbell gym be a good investment? I don't know, Texas Pete. I suspect that it wouldn't be a very good investment, but it might be a good job, right? There's nothing wrong with us owning our own job, but we need to make sure that we understand that we own our own job and that it's not a big investment. You're not going to sell that gym for 10x, but you will have had maybe good employment and stay in a stable life while you operate, and there's nothing wrong with that, So you might consider it for that, and it might be a good investment. I don't know. I'm not opening one. Like, I've got a platform, people know who I am, and I'm not messing with it. I'm telling you that. Texas Pete says, what's Baker's fee? I know what mine is, and I'm not telling you. I think it's a point, and mine's not a point. BJ Dello says he or she works in ag research and says, and run a family farm. Want to pass along how much I appreciate the plant ID post. Thank you. Hey, Jordan. Here's part of my book where I, ID these, make a little index card, and preserve the plants, and put them in here. I've got about 24 identified here from my property, and I'm identifying plants that I don't know. It's been a lot of work, but it's very interesting. It's very educational. Texas Pete says, why not just invest in the index? Hey, go ahead. In my blog post that I'm going to keep referring to, about we live in a post-financial system, I posit that that we live in a post-financial system, and investment decisions are no longer financial decisions. They boil down to making one of three choices: betting with the Fed, betting against the Fed, or going full Kaczynski. I would say that investing in the indexes are going with the Fed, right? S&P 500 the returns of S&P 500 are dictated mostly by the 5 or 8 biggest companies in there, most of which are evil scams, but whatever. The Federal Reserve Bank is actively buying debt from companies in the S&P 500, insuring them up. So to buy an index is to tacitly, whether you know it or not, is to make a bet that the Federal Reserve's policies are going to work for you. To be a value investor is to say that the Fed's policies are ultimately will not work, and it's to bet against them. So why not just invest in the indexes? Maybe you should. Hey, Miami Barbell. The Caymanger says, thanks for doing these. They're very much appreciated. Well, you're welcome. His fifth question, Jordan's fifth question is, when, if ever, should someone hire an accountant? I certainly have an accountant prepare my taxes. Because taxes are constantly changing. My situation has been very complex in the past, and hiring a CPA who has a high rate of success in audits, which doesn't mean he wins audits. It means his clients are audited and then not found to be in violation of rules. I have heard, and I believe, that if you use a CPA, a certified public accountant, who has a reputation with the IRS for doing things properly, that the IRS will leave you alone. And that seems to be the case. I've never cheated on the taxes. I don't even fudge that shit. It's just not worth it. I like to sleep at night, and I don't like people kicking my door in. So I have used the best CPA I could get my hands on for years and years and years. So definitely use them for your taxes. I think you should do all of your own bookkeeping. I don't care what size the business is. Hey, Dre, good morning. Well, I say I don't care what size the business is, but if you have a business that is so big that you can't do the bookkeeping, you probably have some problems that you will need to deal with, and I know that probably seems crazy to people. I have always done all of my own accounting. I did it when I had no employees, and I did it when I had dozens. Modern software suites make it very, very easy to do. And by doing all of my own, hey, Nick Loper, and by doing all of my own accounting, I have kept a thumb on all of my financial condition, in real time. If you own your own business, you have to be acquainted with the financial condition of the business at all times, intimately. Like, maybe that's the most important thing that you have to do, perhaps. And if you have somebody else do your accounting, you're going to have to spend several hours a week getting acquainted with the financial condition of the company. You will have old information because the accountant will have to prepare it and then pass it to you, and then you'll have to study that, and you're going to have to spend several hours a week on it. 8 or 10 hours a week, probably getting acquainted and staying acquainted with the financial condition of the company. I have found that even when I had dozens of employees and millions of dollars in revenue, that I could do my own accounting work in about the same amount of time it would take me to do financial prep, and by virtue of doing the accounting was instantly acquainted with the financial condition of the business. And by doing my own accounting, I had a major fraud control within the company. Almost everybody I know that has owned a small business has had pretty significant fraud perpetrated on them, people stealing from them. And I have certainly had people steal from me, but it was mostly in terms of supplies or stealing from the time clock, right? Punching in and out inappropriately. But I'm not aware of ever having invoices, receivables, fraudulent invoices created, receivables collected, and being defrauded of those monies or anything like that. So me doing the accounting was, a lot of people would say, oh, well, that's a low value function that you should delegate. I absolutely 100% disagree. The purpose of the business is to be a financial black box that generates a proceed for you and your family. And doing the accounting is the best way to keep your hands on it. You know, if you get 500 employees and you can't do it, you know, you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do. But you're going to have to spend a lot of time analyzing financials and a lot of time instituting fraud controls and following up on those. That's a big problem that very few people have. So in general, I'd say do your own accounting. And by the way, if you don't know how to do the accounting, you don't understand financials. You don't understand how to run a small business properly if you don't understand the accounting. You need to understand the accounting. And the software is so good nowadays anyway. It's so much easier to do than it was when I got started and did it, you know, actually in a ledger book. Number 6, Jordan's question number 6. What is your opinion on set it and forget it investing, i.e. ETFs, exchange traded funds, and index funds? ETFs are probably the cheapest way to invest, right? The lowest fees possible. Index funds are going to be this, you know, going to be the second cheapest way to probably invest. You know, John Bogle has a theory that the average investor captures the average market return net of their expenses and taxes, and I think that's true. So in his opinion, he says that you should reduce your taxes as much as you can and reduce the fees, and that's your best chance at the best possible return. I agree with that. I am not necessarily interested in the best possible return, because if you capture the best possible return, or even if you capture, let's say you just capture S&P 500 market average return, you're also going to capture the S&P 500 average volatility. And I'm not always interested in capturing the same volatility. So that's something that people don't really think about. You know, if you match the market returns, you're also going to likely match the market volatility and the market risk. And I'm not always interested in that. So you need to look at those index funds and figure out what indexes they track, and then to determine, what is the risk involved with that index. Also, there is an additional risk in using the index fund, because the index funds actually do not mimic 100% the index. Like, for example, the S&P 500 index fund doesn't own the S&P 500. It will own a basket of stocks that is designed to closely mimic the behavior of the S&P 500. So if you look at the perspective for Spiders or Vanguard's S&P 500 index fund, you'll see that they don't actually own all of those stocks, and that maybe 80% of the holdings of that index fund is in just a handful of stocks, because again, their goal is to match the performance, but not actually match maybe the risk profile. So the index funds and the ETFs are typically not as diversified as the broader index is, and I think there's a huge risk, and it's going to happen at some point. If it can happen, if it is possible to happen, then it will happen. And it is possible that at some point an event occurs within financial markets that causes the behavior of large, like Spiders, a large S&P 500 index fund, to diverge wildly for the performance of the S&P 500, and people are going to get absolutely murdered in that, and there's a risk there. And so what is my opinion? I want to restate the question. What is my opinion of set it and forget it investing? If you're not going to do all the work, to figure out what the heck to do, if you hate this shit, you should probably do it. You should probably, buy one of those Horizon funds from, I think Vanguard has these Horizon funds. I think they all do. Fidelity has them. You put in your age, and it puts you in a portfolio that changes as you age. or index funds. But again, know that when you invest in those kinds of things, I believe that you are betting that the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank, and the United States of America's fiscal policy is going to prevail within your lifetime. Dre the Poet says, what software do I recommend? For years and years and years and years, I have used QuickBooks Pro Desktop Edition. I believe that QuickBooks is discontinuing their desktop edition and they're pushing everybody to their cloud edition. I'm not interested in that. I'm really not worried necessarily about privacy. Like, I don't care if somebody finds out how much OnlineGreatBooks.com paid for internet service. Like, I don't care. So it's not really so much about privacy. It's just about, I don't always have internet service. Like, I just want to have my data. I want to be able to work when I'm offline. And I also don't like having subscriptions. I'd like paying X for the software and using it as long as I can and minimizing my costs there. I don't like that cloud shit. So I don't know what I'm going to do as QuickBooks moves everybody to that cloud model, because I'm not going with them. I may go back to paper ledgers, actually, maybe. I'm not against it. Texas Pete says, liquidity will be driven by the largest indexes by market cap. In the largest indexes by market cap, yeah. Investing in Daniel Frog gives me a sentence fragment. Investing in public companies versus investing in land around where you live. Fill that in a little better, and I'll come back to it. 7, Jordan's question number 7 says, can starting a side business work? Yes. And then the second part of that question is, do you feel you need, I don't feel anything. But I believe, he says, I think what he means is, do you believe, or do you think that you need to be all in to gain any traction? No, you don't need to be all in to gain any traction. Side businesses can work. I have started them. Online Great Books started as a side business. My coaching business started as a side business. When I sold data storage, we had about 125 revenue sources. Virtually, I don't know, I'm going to say half of those started as what were essentially side businesses. Right? The business had a main thing it did. Like, for example, if you have a lawn mowing service and you mow yards, if later on you start applying fertilizers, that's basically a side business. You have an existing clientele that might be interested in buying that, but it's not the core thing that you did, although it's adjacent. How about this? If you mow yards and then you start doing pool maintenance, well, that would certainly be a side business, even though they were related. So what if you're an accountant and you start maintaining pools? Like, who cares? Like, what's the difference? Just, take good care of your clients. Don't lie. Learn from what you're doing and expand the thing, and it'll be all right. He says, do you need to be all in to gain any traction? I don't think so. Most businesses take quite a while to, generate real income, net income. And I don't want anybody to dig into their savings month on month, waiting for one of these things to kick off income. So keep your household income coming in as you work on that side business. I actually think that's the best way to do it. I see people going all in all the time. They quit their job, they have a grand opening, and they just sit in there waiting for that client to come in. Mr. Old English, do you actually want to be in the live video? Hey, Lifts for America. If you actually want to be in the video, we can do that. Number 8. He says, do you believe in retirement? Yes, retirement exists. Then it says, or do you see yourself doing some sort of business income generating activity for life? Hey. I see myself doing some sort of business income generating activity for life, but that's what I do, and I enjoy that, and I'm good at it, and I'm stingy. So yes, I will continue to have some sort of business activity or income generation probably as long as I possibly can. I think it's good for me. It makes me think and it makes me act, and I think it's good. Retirement is a new idea, and it's probably a dumb idea. You know, up until, I don't know, mid-century, 20th century, maybe the 1930s, 40s, 50s, I don't know when, nobody retired. Like you might, historically, you might have backed off of some activities that you had done and hand those off to the younger people, but then you would take up new duties as the grandparent or the patriarch or the matriarch. Um, um, those activities may just be teacher, keeper of the culture, um, I don't know, smaller but not less important duties, like maybe help look after the kids during the day while the young people toiled. So, the idea that somebody works until they're 62 and then they just fucking play golf and watch television until they die is really a stupid, stupid fucking idea. I'm not opening any college. I hope that by the time I'm 90, Zach, or even way, way sooner than that, by the time I'm 52 or 3 or 4, that I don't have any public persona or profile at all. My hope would be that I help my children, move into their roles, whatever those would be, and my sons-in-law that I do not have yet, and help them move into whatever roles they need to have, and I become support staff for those people. That's what I hope. Well, let me look. Yeah, those are Jordan's questions I answered there. So that was kind of cool. Thank you, Jordan, for sending those. He said, feel free to dunk on me. Well, I don't see anything to dunk on there. I don't see anything to dunk on there. Those are good questions, so thanks for sending those in. Library of Majestic says, what's the plan for OGB if you're planning on moving out of the public eye? Well, I think OGB can continue to exist. I can continue to operate it without doing Instagram Lives or being on 6 podcasts a month or 10 podcasts a month, etc. You're a Canadian, you can hit me there. Hey, the Canadian people are good. Your government's garbage, but you're good. It's just much like America. The Americans are good. The United States government's garbage. Hello, Mr. Kleinfelter. Good morning. Yeah, well, there are my financial questions. Lives for America says Scott's going to be the guy with his grandkids you see at the park. We ain't going to the fucking park. We ain't going to the park. The park is like, going to the park is like being a deer grazing in a baited field. Like going to the park is the equivalent of a baited field for pedophiles. Texas Pete says, there is great value in privacy. You just need to be able to build your brand somehow. Yeah, I don't buy all that brand stuff, by the way, as I wear my shirt. I wear the shirt because I'm proud of what we do. But For small businesses, the idea of a brand is a stupid fucking thing. Small businesses look at, Nike and Coca-Cola and McDonald's, and they're like, man, we need a brand. But the truth of it is, it doesn't work at the scale of a small business. You've got to. It takes an enormous amount of money and an enormous amount of exposure to build a brand of any kind. I had a business here that was a regional power, and no one knew who our business was. I had spent a great deal of money and a great deal of time trying to get people to know what data storage was and who data storage was, and get this to be a tip of the tongue name that that businesses in our region carried with them, and we were never able to reach that kind of awareness or saturation, and it wasn't for lack of trying. Yeah, Kleinfelter says you need a good product first. Yes, you need a good product first, absolutely. And then you just have to do direct marketing. You have to go directly to the kind of person that needs what you want and sell that to them. You can automate some of that, when podcasts and email lists and websites help, the newsletters and things like that help us do that. But ultimately, you have to contact the right kind of person. You have to contact them multiple times with a compelling message and get them to purchase. And then once they purchase, you have to deliver on that faithfully. Building a brand, like nobody cares what Online Great Books is. Nobody cared what data storage was. And frankly, nobody cares what Barbell Logic is. You have to tell people, this is what we do. We make people stronger. Here are our testimonials from people who we have made stronger. Here's our guarantee. If we fail to do that for you, here's a contract, press hard, it's 3 copies. Yeah. If you can get a brand, if you can be Harley Davidson and have a brand that is so robust that people tattoo it on their titties, you win. But, there are just a handful of those. There are millions of businesses, and there are just a handful of giant brands like that. So I'm not interested in a brand. People will say, oh, well, Hambrick, you're a brand because you do these podcasts and people know who you are and they trust you. No, I don't believe that. I'm a person, and I may have a reputation. There's a fly just landed on the camera. I have a reputation, and some people trust me and some people hate me. Some people like me because other people hate me. And we end up selling some stuff. But that doesn't mean I'm a brand. It means I'm a person with a reputation for certain kinds of action. Zach says, nobody has ever asked me what my AOM t-shirt is. I tell people about AOM, Barbell Logic, and OGB because I like what y'all do, but nobody ever asked. Yeah, so this shirt, the AOM shirts, Art of Manliness shirts, or whatever, there's something that we wear. I wear it because I'm proud of what I've done. And we also wear it as a signifier to other people who know what we know, right? Every now and then, if I'm wearing one of Brett's shirts, somebody will recognize it, and then we know that we're in the club together, But that's all. And maybe that's part of what being a brand is. But if you think that you're going to rely on one, word of mouth, or 2, brand, you're tripping. It's just not going to work. Can't wait for the day you spot an OGBer in the wild. It's going to be tough. There's only about 1,000 of us. There's 360 million people in the United States. And OGB people are introverts. So it's going to be tough to see them. Yeah, Mr. Kleinfelter says, when I was in the antiques business, I found that it was important to identify a niche market and dig like crazy to find the items the niche buyers will lust after. Right, you have to find your people, and then figure out what their wants and needs are, and then fulfill those, and then find a way to locate more of those people and continue to get in front of them. I had an orientation for new Online Great Books members last night, and one of the guys, I do the orientation, and then I hang around for Q&A, questions and answers, and one of the guys said, hey, I've been hanging around in Slack, and I noticed there are a bunch of Catholics, 2, there are a bunch of barbell people, and 3, there are a bunch of homesteaders in there. He's like, what is that about? And I'm like, I don't really know what that's all about, but that's who our people are. they're self-reliance people, um, and they're traditional people. That's who our people are. So it is our job to get in front of more self-reliance people and more traditional people, and tell them what we offer, and make promises to them and follow through. You know, yeah. And I actually know why there are the Catholics in there. Mortimer Adler was Jewish, the kind of the founder of the Great Books movement. He was Jewish, and lived in New York State. Moved to Chicago, founded the basic program at the University of Chicago, and then later the Encyclopedia Britannica Great Books of the Western World program. He was on television. He was on Firing Line 2 or 3 times a year talking about this, talking about great books, blah blah blah. By the time he was about 50 and had read Plato and Aristotle and Aquinas, he converted to Catholicism. That tends to happen, so beware. Library Majestic says, do you have any advice on how to exit the Globo Corp life? Yeah, quit, walk out. Yeah, you're gonna have to get your expenses, Library Majestic. You're gonna have to get your expenses way low, way low. You got to live as cheap as you can, and then try to get a side gig going so that you can get some income in. Because when you leave Globo Corp, you're probably going to get smoked, like income wise, right? You're not going to have insurance, you're not going to have dental insurance, you're not going to have, and you're not going to have that Globo Corp money coming to you, and that'll hurt for a while. So, get some income from some source, start, I don't know, mow yards, whatever, but trim down those expenses. And the way you trim down expenses is not by canceling Netflix and not going to Starbucks. It's by selling your big house, living in a dump, sell your cars, drive a piece of shit, and like live real cheap. And guys, I've done it. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm in a barn right now. I'm in a barn. Like, there's our kitchen. It's open to the barn. Like, it was 40 degrees in here this winter with the doors shut and the wood stove going. It'll be 100 in here in another 40 days. But we can live here for about $300 a month. And I've probably got more money than all of you. Get skinny and live cheap. Yeah, poet in place, Mr. Kleinfelder says, live cheap and local. Live cheap. Get rid of everything and live in an RV if you need to. Go buy an RV trailer for $8,000. Have the RV dealership tow it to a RV park and pay your $350 a month for your RV hookup, and stack dimes and work your ass off and get out of that big company. How did you get your wife to live in a barn? Teach me. Good dickin'. It all boils down to that. No, but I have a track record of making good decisions for us, and I have a good track record of making all of these things that we have done, from buying businesses to selling businesses, even child rearing and so on. I have a good track record of making those things adventures that have made us better off as a couple. And I'm not even talking about the money, right, that have been useful to us at having a relationship. And I'm like, hey, this is the next project. This is the next adventure. Here's why we should do it. Here is the benefit. Like, we are actually putting ourselves in a position to be the kind of grandparents that we think our grandkids need, right? We have a large acreage here. We're going to have all kinds of things that those grandkids can do and will want to do. And I'm not talking about swing sets and stupid shit, like animals and ponds and responsibilities and all those kinds of things that they need. I think that they need, that we had when we were kids, Charity and I, and we wanted to make sure that our grandkids had access to that, having failed to give access to those things to our own kids. And so I was like, if we're going to be the best possible grandparents that we can be and have the best possible shot at our grandchildren having the good life, then this is the kind of thing we need to do. And we need to marshal our resources so that we can use those resources to give those people, our progeny, our posterity, a leg up, and not just buy an RV and travel the country and spend their inheritance. So we're trying to do that. Daniel Frog says, Joel Salatin, Greg Judy, and Wendell Berry probably don't invest in index funds. If they're living the good life, shouldn't we invest like they do and invest in the land around us? I think so. We're going to Greg Judy's grazing school in September. So I'll be out there with Greg. Charity and I are going to go out and meet Greg and Jan and go hang out on their farm September. Yeah, so if any of you guys want to go do that, go see us out there. September 9th and 10th, his grazing school, we're going to that. There aren't a lot of spots. It's about half sold out already. It's been open for like a week, so there you go. Do you have a house on the property? You actually live in the barn. We do not have a house on the property. We actually live in the barn. We intend to have a house, but we don't have one right now. Prices are too high. I ain't building with $80 plywood. I'm not doing it. We may end up living in the barn. But we have a plan. We have plans to build a very, very nice but small home here on the place. Just right over there. But if these prices continue as they are, we won't do it. We'll just live here. We'll live here. It's paid for. We built this. It's a big, nice building. I say it's a barn. It's actually not true. It's a shop building. It's a big shop building. It's cluttered as hell. But it's super cluttered, but whatever. We don't care. But like I said, we built it for cheap, and it's cheap to live here. And that's what we'll do if we decide that's what's best. Because yeah, it's good. It's a good life. What else, you guys? Library Majestic says, thanks for these streams and advice. I appreciate the perspective you give. Well, good luck. Thank you for saying that. But what I do doesn't work for many people. So best of luck on that. Well, see, my wife gives me my haircuts. I haven't paid for a haircut in 2 years. When I quit going into an office and having to impress a bunch of dickheads, I quit going to the barber. I mean, I was paying $35 a week. I was going to get a haircut. Listen, if you're in sales and you go deal with people, you need to get a haircut every week. Because if somebody notices that you got a haircut, if they're like, hey man, did you go get a haircut? Here's what that means. That means you looked like you needed a haircut before you went and got it. You need to look like you need to look fresh every minute. And so anyway, I would go get a haircut every week, and it's $35 a month or a week. And when I stopped going into offices and talking to Peckerwoods about giving me their money, I quit worrying about that stuff. Poet in Place says, I utilize local mills as much as I can. Yeah, I do. I like to do that too. There's one over here in Pryor. There's some around. I agree. But there ain't a local plywood mill. Which do I enjoy working with more, metal or wood? I don't care. I guess wood. In fact, I've got a bunch of shit on my trailer out there, and I've got to go unload the trailer, and then I'm going to record podcasts at 11. And then that'll probably actually take the rest of the day. And then I'm going to record podcasts from 11 till about 4:30. Then I'll eat, and then I'm doing a live stream for my strength clients at Barbell Logic at 5:30. And that'll pretty much be a wrap for the day. And then tomorrow morning I'm getting up and I'm going to Pixley Lumber in Claremore, and I'm going to pick up a load of lumber and come home with that. And I'm going to be building a bunch of hive boxes and stuff. And then I'm going to, and then also some materials for making a chickshaw. Jordan says, can you speak to why you stopped calling yourself a libertarian? Have we ever heard your views on Rand? Rand is basically an Aristotelian. All that is good about Ayn Rand, and I have been a huge Ayn Rand fan, but all that is good about Ayn Rand is actually Aristotle. There is nothing new or interesting in Rand other than her reactionary views to communism. Everything else is Aristotle. So everything I loved about Rand, I found out later was Aristotle. So I went to the source, got rid of all the communism ressentiment, and all of the ugly girl resentment and found the truth there. I stopped being a libertarian because libertarianism is bullshit just as much as Marxism is. You know, they always say, oh, it's never really been tried. If we could just get the right person and really try, then we could get true libertarianism and then we would know. But the main reason that I don't like libertarianism is because they don't know what to do with government power. They don't know how to use government power, or any power for that matter, to actually bring about their own political aims. They can never achieve their aims because they refuse to use political power. Right? Their whole stance is to not use political power. They can never achieve their aims. It's absolutely, that's what you get when you live in a barn. There's flies on the camera. It's absolutely a retarded pipe dream because they can never do what they claim they want to do because they don't understand political power at all. Like their policy is to not use political power. Well, how will they bring that about? Thirdly, libertarianism is not concerned with the good life. For libertarianism, the highest ideal is license to let anyone do whatever they want. And I don't believe in the idea of a victimless crime. This fucking fly. I don't believe in such a thing as a victimless crime. I believe that everybody is important. I believe that the individual has something wonderful in them, this animating spirit, and that if nothing else, that person would be a victim of their licentious behavior. And I don't buy it. I think that Oklahoma is worse off now with medical marijuana and recreational marijuana than it was before. Now, ostensibly, like, freedom is higher, but I think we're worse off. And libertarians essentially are progressives, but they don't even know it, right? There's nothing they won't allow. There's just nothing they won't allow. They can't make an argument. They can't make an argument for not letting trannies read books to your kids in kindergarten. They can't actually make an argument for 14-year-olds selling. They can't make a consistent libertarian argument for not allowing 14-year-olds to sell their sexual services. Like, it's stupid. It's fucking stupid. The whole thing is stupid. And I was the biggest one you've ever met. It's just an autistic freak out. It's ridiculous. My rack and platform are in my bedroom. Yeah, so we no longer do in-person coaching. I actually quit doing in-person coaching in November 2019. I hate doing it. Not because I hate seeing people in person, but I hate having that schedule. I hate having people come to my home. We had a home gym. I just hated it. I like coaching people, but I hated having that schedule, and I hated having people at the house all the time. We just had no privacy as a result of that, and it's just a bummer, man. And we were growing that business, and it was very good, and we were making a lot of people very strong, but I didn't like it. And I certainly didn't want to have to get in my automobile and go unlock a facility and do that somewhere else. So we now just coach a few people who are basically family in person and do online coaching. Poet in place says, since legal weed in Washington, we now have more meth and opiates. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and the libertarians reject the whole idea of a slippery slope as a fallacy, but they just refuse to address human nature. The whole, like, everywhere I turn, it's stupid. And so you can be a monarchist and be a small government person, right? You can be a monarchist and understand how to wield political power, or have an opinion on how to best wield political power, still be a minarchist, right? Be a small government advocate, but not embrace all the retarded libertarian stuff, guys. Here in the United States, there's sort of a dichotomy that people think about. They're like, okay, well, you're either a big government guy or you're a libertarian. Well, I'm actually neither of those things. I would like a monarchy, which is almost necessarily going to be a minarchist situation. I can't keep my pipe lit when I talk to you people. The libertarians are a bigger set of enemies than the ideological left is. Buckley moving the Republican Party away from the John Birch sort of right wing towards a libertarian left, essentially, was the beginning of the end of the Republican Party. Yeah, maybe not the beginning of the end, but was a big blow. And I'm so sick of libertarians. I'm so sick of them. What else, guys? If you don't have anything else, I'll go unload that trailer and get on with my day. Nothing? Well, thank you guys for coming. Hello, Robert, Mike, Johannes Baker. Is there a totalitarian monarchy in history that you think did it right? I think the Habsburgs probably did it right for a long time. And you say totalitarian. Listen, don't say that. You don't put those two together. Just say monarchy. The Habsburgs had it right for a long time. Charlemagne had it right. Whatever. I will post this. I will post this so we can go back and listen to the beginning there. Green Eggs and Sam. I'll see if I can extract the audio off of this too and put it on Scott's stream. Yeah, so this started. Thank you, Zach. Do I have any interest in psychedelics? No. Neither should you. Psychedelics are the doorway to butt stuff. Stay away from that shit. Jordan sent me these questions about, my financial opinions on these different financial questions or problems or whatever. And my opinion about some of those things is changing. I still believe in value investing, but I'm starting to see that the system that we are investing and participating in is so tampered with and is so non-objective and is such a rigged game that value investing doesn't work. I think that if you have anything that even approaches looking like an honest market, value investing is the thing to do. But I have come to believe, and I think I'm right, that we are not in that kind of a situation. So value investing doesn't hold. We have to make other kinds of bets. And I can make a pretty good argument for saying, like I said earlier, your financial bets are no longer financial. Now they're policy bets. Do I think the Fed will prevail? Do I think the Fed is going to fail in my lifetime? Or do I want to not participate and be Ted Kaczynski and live in a hut? I can make a pretty good argument that says you should bet with the Fed. Bet with the Fed because if they're right, then you win. Bet with the Fed because if they're not right, then it's all going to be Hunger Games anyway, right? So maybe the thing to do is to buy the index funds, perhaps, because either the Fed's going to win and they're right, or the Fed's wrong, in which all bets are off anyway, and it's going to be all every man for himself. I enjoyed your podcast comment that Sturgill Simpson is meant to bring butt stuff for poor rednecks. You like his stuff though. Don't listen to him. Seriously, he's a psyop. Don't listen to him. Library of Majestic says, any advice on how to acquire land for a good price? How did you come across your acreage? We bought this. We bought this a while ago. We were driving around every day looking. And we were driving around every day looking for property, my wife and I. And she found it. I can't remember if we drove by it or if she had seen it on a website or if we heard about it through the Redneck Telegram. I don't remember, but we bought the thing. And how to acquire it for a good price? I don't know that you can right now. I don't know that you can right now. You say how to acquire land for a good price. Well, the bigger problem is how do you acquire good land for a value price? So I don't know. Nick Loper says, what are the benefits of monarchy? There are many. 1, when you have a monarch, there are fewer people to kill to overthrow an unjust government. 2, the monarch has a long-term view of his or her role, and we now want people to have a shorter and shorter term view of their role in government by limiting their term. I say no. I say make sure they have the longest possible view of their role in government, and the way to do that would be let them have a hereditary stake. Actually, I say let them. A proper monarch would take it. They would have their whole family would have a hereditary stake in government. So that monarch would know, Henry II would know that if he doesn't govern properly, his sons, his grandsons, his great-grandsons, and actually his nation, which is an extension of his family group, would suffer. So it would behoove that monarch to make the best possible decisions for the long haul, not for today, not for the voter base today, for the fall election. 3, the monarch has a property right in the government. Like the government is actually that person's property, and that would, in the nation. And that would cause them to make good judgments about the management of that, because it's not viewed as something to extract wealth from, but something to husband. 4, because of the long-term view that they would have, the peril to themselves if they are unjust, and that long-term interest in the government, they are much less likely to enter into frivolous war because they have to fund it straight out of their pocket. But all of those things mean that they're going to be less likely to debase the currency, they're going to be much more respectful of their people, and so on and so on and so on. Can I expound? Who is behind the PSYOP? Hollywood. Hollywood in retarded fucking Nashville, RCA Nashville, or whoever it was that gave him a deal. Jason Isbell has recently come out as a kind of a pro-Antifa, pro-BLM country music artist. Like, what are we talking about? And then I saw recently that Isbell and Sturgill Simpson were given a movie deal. That's how it happens. It's not how you think it is. It's not like the CIA created him in a laboratory. They know that he's basically a progressive. They are Hollywood, and degenerate progressives know that he is basically another degenerative progressive, and they set him up for success so that they can subvert Southern and rural culture. They're not going to let me on the Rogan podcast. I would eat that motherfucker alive. But Sturgill Simpson gets on the Rogan podcast because they know that he's a degenerate, and that will give him more credence among rural people, and they can continue to subvert rural culture. We're getting ready to do a show about outlaw country, and outlaw country was basically a reaction against those controlling interests that were trying to control Southern culture. Jason Chakroff says, I have an infinitely long reading list, but check out The Plantagenets by Dan Jones. Yeah. RDB Smile says, somebody just went off on crypto is totally based on total thin air. It's not based on total thin air, but I'm kind of coming around to hit the. I'm kind of coming around anti-crypto actually. Who I think will kickstart the next world war? I don't think there will be another next world war. And I don't think there's going to be another one in our lifetimes. The United States is not able to wage any wide-scale war. Yeah, so we won't be participating in that. We'll fuck around and find out. China will put a carrier group on the bottom of the South China Sea. China will just quit shipping antibiotics to us. Like, we don't make anything. We're not in any position to wage any kind of wide-scale conflict. We just can't do it. Not to mention our military is shot through with trannies and weirdos and is basically a progressive sociological experiment now. You are aiming for a monarchy of a distributive nation. Yeah, probably. Texas Pete says a large part of the value priced into Bitcoin is the hedge against the Fed that Scott speaks of. If you're truly worried, maybe a third invested in indexes, a third in crypto, and a third in firearms and provisions. Yeah, probably not. Crypto is done. Crypto is done. About 3-4 weeks ago, the anti-crypto people figured out the rhetorical kill shot. There are two of those. Those rhetorical kill shots against crypto are, one, that it isn't green. In the late 80s, I started seeing people talk about things not being green, right? I started seeing Greenpeace more active. I started seeing environmental activism in corporate activism. And I thought, this is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. This will never work. It worked. Environmentalism is one of the three new religions. The three new religions are environmentalism, race, or scientism. And there are probably something like 40% of the people in the country would never buy crypto now because they're starting to believe that it's bad for the environment. I've seen news stories that allege that a coal-fired power plant was being spooled up in either Wyoming or Montana to power a Bitcoin miner, which is an absolute fabrication. But I've seen the story. Tesla said they're not going to take Bitcoin because it's not green, etc. So all of these upper middle class and middle class scrambling, striving Haradan women that like go through their trash and separate out things for recycling. Like, there are like upper middle class women who won't get dirty or do anything that go through the trash to recycle, right? Who carry around these dirty canvas totes to Whole Foods because they think somehow that that's better than the paper bag. Those people will never use Bitcoin once they've read one of those stories and they won't allow their husband to do it. Now, it's just the beginning of this, but they're going to continue to hammer the environmental impact of Bitcoin. I know it's not true. The legacy banking system is far more harmful to the environment than Bitcoin would be. It doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. We've lost that rhetorical game. And then also, I've been making arguments that Iran is buying weapons with Bitcoin and that Iran is in fact a Bitcoin miner. So the people on the right, the sort of neo-Zionist bastards on the right, are going to be against crypto. So there's a huge number of people that have been, because of these rhetorical kill shots, have been excluded from the crypto community and will never ever use them. I think it's over. Do I have any recommendations for YouTube channels on homesteading? I don't know. I love Greg Judy's channel. I love Greg Judy's channel. Most of the homesteading YouTube people are really YouTubers that homestead just to create the content. Like Justin Rhodes, who seems like a grand guy, but he has enormous revenues from his YouTube work that he uses to fund his homesteading efforts, and most people can't do that. So I watch Justin Rhodes, and I enjoy that, but he's really a content creator, and that's his main gig, and I don't begrudge him that. But I think authentic homesteaders, you're probably not going to see them because they're too busy working their ass off, and they're too poor. Yeah, they're too poor. But there's a guy named David the Good who's an excellent gardener. He's got a great channel. He talks about gardening. I think that's important. Watching Greg Judy talk about rotational and grazing and regenerative grazing, I think that's important, an important aspect. But I don't know what else. YouTube's a time suck. You're better off getting out there and screwing up and making mistakes. Global war is bad for business. Too much money at stake in global economy to ever world war again. I think you're wrong about that. The United States seems to think that, but there are other people that understand power and understand war in a much cleaner, clearer way than the United States does. The United States believes, since the Revolutionary War, thinks that war is basically ideological and is used to correct moral wrongs, right? It's used to overthrow an immoral King George, which was wrong. You know, we overthrew our monarch over about a 2 or 3% tax, basically. There are some other grievances. We know what they are in the Declaration of Independence. They are nothing compared to what's happening to us now. It was a power grab. It's fine. But our wars have been about moral issues. The Civil War was largely about that for our northern aggressors. World War I, World War II, you know, war has historically been and is properly about power and resource acquisition. Most of the people in the world understand that war is not about making the world safe for democracy or my democratic values or my anal for Taiwan. It's, for most people, it is about acquiring territory, power, and resources. If somebody wants your territory, your power, and your resources and thinks they have an opportunity to get that, traditionally, since the beginning of recorded time, they will make a move on that. So our idea that everything is financial and everything's about GDP is fucking wrong, and we are getting ready to be disabused of that. Blockchain technology will likely be used for the dollar, though, and the other global reserve currencies. You're probably right about crypto as a standard alone wildcat. Yeah, I think I'm right about that. We don't want blockchain either, by the way. I've come to believe that blockchain is going to end up being like a tyrannical, not an AI, but a tyrannical algorithm that has huge governing power over us that we didn't want to grant it. I could go on, but maybe I need to write a blog post about that. You don't want a permanent distributed ledger. You don't want that. You think you do? You don't want that. I promise you. Yeah, the American notion of war is absolutely corrupt. It's metaphysically wrong and is going to get us in an enormous amount of trouble. All right. Anything else? It's 9:52. This was a good one. Thank you guys for showing up. It was a good one. Everything's crazy out there. Everything's crazy out there. Go read some good books. Try to grow some calories. Oh, somebody back here asked about how my garden was doing. My garden is absolutely embarrassing, disappointing, frustrating. It's been unseasonably cool here. This is my first year gardening on this property. I think I probably put it in the wrong spot. It's been very wet and very cool here, and my garden is just damn near drowned out. You know, that's how gardening is. If I'd put it on a high spot, you know, I have a dry year, the thing will, you know, burn up. You really have to garden real big to make sure you're successful. You need to have a garden in the high spot and the low spot and in the medium spot. But my garden has done very poorly. I've made a lot of mistakes with it, and if we were depending on calories from this place to get through the winter, a bunch of the Hamburgs would not make it. Yeah. Global war being bad for business. Nobody cares about business. Nobody cares about business. Nobody's not true, but you understand what I'm saying? Like, that's a preoccupation that Americans and British have that not everybody else has. For the Chinese, I believe that that business is a means of waging war without firing weapons. They are very interested in business, not because of the profit necessarily that it yields, but because of the geopolitical power it gets them. They use business as war by another method, right? And the United States has tried to do that, but failed. The United States is a failed experiment in almost every respect. Yeah. Anything else, y'all? This pipe is awfully good. All right. Well, if there is nothing else, I'll log off here and I'll see if I can extract audio out of this and maybe cut some of the silences out and put it out as a Scotch stream. But I'll certainly leave it on the IGTV, and hopefully it'll be of some use to someone. I'll probably get deplatformed at some point because of this stuff. Who knows? Looking forward to the Outlaw Country episode. Oh, thank you. I've been working along on it. I'll probably record it in 2 weeks from today, would be my guess. So it'll be another 3 or 4 weeks out, probably. Hey, thanks for sending those questions in, Jordan. I appreciate that very much. If any of you guys else want to have some questions you want us to do, want me to field on a live stream, send me those questions, DM them to me, and we'll, maybe I'll do that. It's fun. Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, we'll have some David Allen in there, David Allen Co. Not David Allen of Getting Things Done, but David Allen Co. of Effing Stuff Up. Thanks so much. Thanks, D Zen. Talk to y'all soon-ish.